My name is Wojciech Boyd. And yes, I know that my first name sounds, weird. It looks even stranger written down, at least according to my colleagues. I can't even count all the times someone has called me Wojtek or Wojtek in an attempt to pronounce it. One of my coworkers started calling me simply Void, and it stuck. My original last name was even more challenging for my fellow North Americans to wrap their minds and tongues around, so when I got married, I gratefully took the opportunity to change it. So yes, here I am, Boyd Boyd. But luckily for you, this audio is a one-way street, so you don't have to worry about calling me anything at all. I wouldn't hear it anyway. But back to the introduction so that we can move on to the fun part. I've always been fascinated by death, ever since I can remember. Not in a morbid sort of a way, mind you. I've never had any inclinations to murder or hurt anyone, and although I have dutifully watched all the Saw movies, I have never had any desire to seek out gore. No. But I've always been drawn to the idea of death, even as a child. As I grew into somewhat of an adult, I realized that this fascination was more so scientific than thrill-seeking. I was, simply put, curious. I still am curious. I mean, isn't everyone? I doubt I'm the only one desperately searching for the answer to what separates life and death. It's not as easy as it sounds. Heck, I can't even define what life is, let alone what makes it different from non-life. Looking at a cadaver, I can't help but wonder, what is that specific element that's missing from the lifeless meat before me? What is it that renders this a corpse by its absence? And if I replicate it and return that element back into the dead body, would it come back to life? Would it be the same life? For instance, why is it that a first responder can make a dead heart beat again with a surge of electricity, but I cannot do the same for a heart that stopped yesterday? Is life just a collection of unrelated factors that happen to work together, and once they get out of sync, they aren't life anymore? Don't even get me started on amputations, sea sponges, and consciousness. Life is weird, and I have no idea how it works. And that's why I hunger for death so much. To learn about it, to see what it means for our life to end, to understand this whole mess that we get born into. Then there's also the way death connects people. No matter who you are or where you are from, you're going to die. Yes, you are. I am going to die, you are going to die. Everyone who came before us and will come after us will also die. It's something that we all, without exception, have in common. I like that. It can be hard to connect with people sometimes since we're all so different. This commonality calms me down somewhat. It's reassuring to know that the person who blocks the whole aisle at a grocery store with their cart will die. The person that only types in capital letters will die. The person that wears too much perfume, yep, also future dead. Drunk drivers, dead as well, probably sooner than the others. And no, this doesn't calm me because I get some weird sense of pleasure out of imagining their last moments. It simply helps me realize that they are also as stupid and unaware as I am, going through life they do not understand, and sooner or later we will all break down into minerals and build a new world with our decomposing bodies. It's a beautiful unity of ignorance and the endless struggle of life to continue in some way, even after the last human gives up. Even if we obliterated our planet, which we're on our way to do so, the building blocks would still be there, floating through space, waiting for another opportunity. Death is just life waiting to happen. I didn't mean to go on about this for so long, my apologies. I just wanted to give you an idea of the reasons why I decided to make death part of my profession. My original plan was to become a medical examiner. I got accepted to the medical program at a local university, but that's as far as I got. Ironically, it was my health that got in the way. I had to spend too much time in the hospital as a patient to be able to study for a doctor. Luckily, I married into a Mormon family, so I had the wonderful benefit of reaping the fruits of my in-laws' expert networking skills. It's been 2 years now since Gilbert, the owner of Geminids Crematorium, hired me as a garçon tourne. Yes, that is the official title, and yes, I am most definitely mispronouncing it. I definitely hope that I never have to look for another job, as I'm not sure how attractive this title would look on my resume. As for my duties at Geminids, I don't help with the bodies really, at least not officially. Since I have no certifications in the field of burning cadavers, Gilbert won't let me do the deed myself. I do get to help with maneuvering our stiff guests and observing the process occasionally, but nothing too interesting as far as actual dead people are concerned. Most of the time, I just deal with paperwork, filing, organizing, cleaning, getting timmies, and disposing of any uncollected personal belongings. That is the best part. Have you ever wondered about what happens to all those things that are collected alongside the body? The clothing, the pocket contents, the suicide notes? Each place has its own protocols, so I can't vouch for other countries or even cities, but here the process goes like this. When a dead person is discovered, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, or OCME for short, claims the body along with anything on it. The remains are then kept in a separate body bag, while the items it was found with are catalogued and stored in another container. Suppose either the medical examiner or the police determine that some kind of criminal activity might have been involved in the death. In that case, the person's belongings are handed over to the police as evidence. However, if there was no foul play, the items are kept at the OCME until the family of the deceased collects them. Except, sometimes they never do get collected. A lot of the time, the family finds it too painful to hold on to these items. Other times, there is no family left. In those cases, the OCME hands the items, sometimes accompanied by the owner, over to a crematorium for disposal. And as luck, or maybe just Gilbert's business sense, would have it, Geminids is the closest crematorium to the local OCME. We actually don't get much regular traffic at all, thanks to the location. I tried asking Gilbert about when and how he opened the crematorium, but every time I get a different, and equally nonsensical, answer, sometimes in French. You see, the location of Gemini's is just way too perfect. From the outside, the crematorium looks kind of like an old library or maybe a small semi-mansion. It's not overly ornate and has one of those auras that would make it blend in no matter where it was built. It has some trees and bushes around it, and Gilbert planted a flower bed at the front last summer, but it's all just very unassuming. Even though I've lived in the city for almost 10 years now, and I have walked by the crematorium on multiple occasions, I never really noticed it until I walked through the front door and entered its warm belly. But that's not the weird thing, no. The reason I keep asking Gilbert about how he came to acquire the business is the neighbors. When facing the front door from the outside, you would soon notice that the building to the right of us is a senior's home called The Manor. To the left, just across the road, is the newly built hospital, the biggest one in the city. If you turned around from the door and looked into the distance, you would see the top of the OCME building just behind a small park. Other than that, it's all just office and residential buildings. In case you don't realize what this means, we basically live in the neighborhood of death. Nobody seems to mind, quite the opposite. The hospital is glad that they don't have to transfer the departed across the city. The OCME does regular drop-offs right to our door, and the manor... Well, I try not to look at the manor too much. It feels kind of weird knowing that most of its residents won't go very far after they pass away. Anyway, no matter where our customers come from, you'd be surprised how many oddities show up at our doorstep sometimes. I never judge any of it though. Heck, I even cried over a pack of condoms once, just because I realized how stark and depressing the contrast between life and death was. One moment you're planning to have sex, and the next moment you're a pile of ashes. No protection can save you from that. I've always kept the contents of our grim deliveries to myself, but it's been getting harder lately. You see, when they arrive, I have to check each container and compare it to the itemized list that comes with it, making sure that everything is accounted for. I never dig through them too much though, or spend unnecessarily long inspecting each little thing. Except for the notes. Burning anything that has writing on it has always been a real struggle for me. It just feels wrong. I mean, someone has written down a piece of their soul on that paper, intentionally sealing a part of themselves in those pages. Burning the bodies I have no problems with. There is nothing left in them at that point. But the writing, it feels alive. It's the last surviving artifact of the mind that once dwelt in that lifeless body. Even if it's just a little sticky note with an appointment reminder, it's still proof of the consciousness that once existed and is no more. These tiny fragments, insignificant as they may seem, are the last words of the deceased. So I started reading them. And yes, I realize that it sounds unethical, and maybe it is, but I feel like I owe it to those people. Most of them obviously had something to say, but no audience to hear them out. I volunteer to be that audience, and maybe even the voice that carries the message further still. There is magic in words that have been spilled onto physical paper. Even more so now, when most people communicate via the internet and keep all sorts of notes and reminders exclusively on their phones. That's why when I see something written down by hand, it feels so wonderfully special. I wonder if the person who that hand belonged to also knew how special it was. It's mostly just little scraps of paper. Mementos, shopping lists, receipts, flyers, business cards. You'd be especially surprised how many people die with flyers on them. Those pesky things always find their way in somehow. But that's not always the case. I have, unfortunately, burned loads of various letters, diaries, journals, and so on. And I will continue to burn them, obviously, but not before recording them here. Not before giving them a second chance at life. The only thing I'm still not sure about are the letters of farewells. I know what it's like to lose someone without noticing. I know that blame and guilt that scratches from that moment on and on until eternity. And I don't think I'd like to hear someone read those words in a stranger's voice. It's odd. I haven't even started yet, and already I feel a lot of responsibility for where this might lead. Well, that's not entirely true. I have started already, and I was fully, catastrophically aware of that fact when I opened the first letter. I will leave those alone for now. Instead, I will focus solely on the literary echoes that I am certain want to be heard. How exactly it is that I am certain, I cannot say, but I feel almost like a guardian. Like I don't want to do this, but must. But I have to admit that that's not the only reason I'm doing this. There are a few others. I've been having nightmares lately. There's one that has been especially persistent. In this nightmare, I go about my work as usual, placing a few containers of various mementos into the incinerator. I close the door, turn the machine on, and then I hear the screams. I immediately look through the small window into the ginormous oven, but all of the things I fed it earlier are gone. Instead, it's full of people. Living people. But it's too late at that point, and the shrieks and writhing in agony only last a second before there's nothing left. And I just stand there, still looking through the tiny window, watching the unmoving piles of ash as their scream still carries on in my head. I can't move, just stare and think. I was the only one who could hear their scream. I've had just about enough of that dream, so I thought maybe, just maybe, if I weren't in front of that incinerator alone, if I weren't the only one those people could ask for help, perhaps it would be better. There's another thing as well. Ever since I started reading these notes a few weeks ago, I have come across a few that screamed a lot louder than the others. Some of them stood out to me because of their obvious strangeness. Some of the others just have this urgency to them that keeps bugging me until I come back to them, reading them over and over, trying to find something that was never there. Either way, it was when I saw the second note that had this effect on me that I decided to do something more about them than just read through them on my breaks. I have to share them with others. Or at least feel like I'm sharing them with others. I'm not sure if there's a difference. It took me a while to figure out how to do this. I've never been one for writing myself, and I don't have any friends to talk about this with. I do take the privacy of everyone involved very seriously, though. I'm never going to take any of the original files outside of Geminids. I will never take any pictures of any of these materials, and I will always leave out or change any identifiable information such as names. All very respectable goals, I believe, but it did leave me with the conundrum of how exactly I should share these notes then. The only solution I could think of at first was to rewrite them on my laptop while leaving out any specifics and providing the necessary context. The problem with that is that I hate writing. Not because I don't appreciate or respect the written word, quite the opposite. I take it too seriously. Not to mention that at this point, I have sunk so deep into self-imposed loneliness that publishing my words online feels like an invitation to interaction. Audio, on the other hand, feels much less solid. I can talk and talk and talk and talk without a threat of anyone replying. Maybe that's yet another reason why I'm doing this. I haven't spoken to anyone in a really long time. Maybe I miss it a bit. Maybe I'm even a little bit bored. I'm definitely bored. But this way I can finally talk again, and it doesn't matter if anyone is listening. It definitely feels a lot less weird than talking to the wall. Anyway, yes, I have decided to record these notes right here in Geminids. It's the perfect spot for recording after all. Dead quiet. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of Geminids Crematorium Presents Last Words. Void will have a new spooky story for you every other Tuesday, but in the meantime, you can visit the crematorium yourself at geminidscrematorium.com. This podcast is written, narrated, and produced by Chris Marvici. Ethereal whispers provided by the wonderful Delirious. Thank you, and rest in peace.